Welcome to the Agents of Fandom podcast. I am your host, TJ Zwarich. We have a very special live show today. Before I get to introducing my guests, welcome to all of our new Twitch followers. We got a bunch of new viewers in today. And so we want to welcome you to the feed. You can find the Agents of Fandom podcast wherever you get your podcasts. You can find our YouTube channel on YouTube. We're on all the socials, Agents of Fandom, everywhere except Twitter. It's just at Agents Fandom. Welcome. I'm joined as always by my co-host Garrett. Garrett, how are you doing this morning? Bright and early for you on the West Coast.
Yeah. Well, luckily I already was up because I had to take my mom to the train station at 5 a.m. So it worked out, and I was able to kind of wake up a little bit, and I'm ready to talk Multiverse of Madness. I love this movie, so let's get into it.
You're up early, the stars align, the multiverse aligned for us to make something crazy happen today. We're balancing a bunch of different time zones, and we got a very special guest all the way from the UK, Paul from Heavy Spoilers. How you doing, Paul?
What's happening? We out here having a lovely day, lovely and sunny in the UK for once. So ready to roll. Love the movie. Got nothing bad to say about it. Kevin Feige, the check cleared. We're doing it.
Absolutely love it. And we have two guests on today's show, bringing in another one of the most popular YouTubers in the genre for this. And we are very excited to have from the Den of Nerds, Josh. How you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing well. I also got the check, it cleared, and so I'm excited, man. I love this movie. I really love where Marvel's headed as well. So I think even for folks that maybe didn't love the movie, I still think there's plenty of stuff in there that kind of can get you excited about things that are to come. And there's a lot of cool topics on the docket as well. I have a lot of thoughts, so I'm excited.
Hell yes. We're gonna have some fun today because we've had both of you on in the past, but obviously this time we get to do it together. And I've been excited for this because the two of you know each other and interact on socials all the time. And Garrett and I love each other, but also love to get into it a little bit. And the two of you seem to have that kind of relationship as well, where it's like friends, but almost frenemies, where you like to argue a little bit. So I'm excited for the type of banter we're going to get going today.
Yeah. I would agree with that, but I think when it comes to this movie, we probably align pretty close. Like we've talked a little bit. On. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Throughout the show, I'm going to try and find ways to pitch you against each other, but we'll see if it can happen.
Okay.
We also have some crazy giveaways going. We will be announcing the winner of this one on this Friday, the day after tomorrow. We are giving away Anthony Francisco, former Marvel Studios artist, his copy of the book Uber Monsters. So if you're not familiar with Anthony's work, he's worked all throughout the MCU, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Thor Ragnarok, Thor the Dark World, Guardians of the Galaxy. He's got all of his Marvel Studios concept art in here. And one of his probably what he's most famous for is he's the man who created Baby Groot. He drew James Gunn's vision of Baby Groot. And we have a signed copy here of Uber Monsters from Anthony Francisco with a hand-drawn Baby Groot. So all you have to do to win that is head over to Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star rating and review at Agents of Fandom. Head over there and you are eligible to win. We are announcing that on Friday. The other giveaway we got going, head over to our Twitter. As soon as we get 1,000 followers, we're giving away this Doctor Strange in the Nexus of Nightmares comic book. It released right before the movie. Didn't know if it was going to tie in at all. Obviously, not so much, but still, it's a cool brand new first issue Doctor Strange Nexus of Nightmares comic that we're going to be giving away as soon as we hit 1,000 Twitter followers. Now, that's all the boring stuff's out of the way. We get to talk about some fun stuff. So there was some Marvel news this week before we get into the Doctor Strange review about Moon Knight. And so a fun one is we were speculating some things, whether Alexander the Great being a avatar of Amit. Wonder if that could tie into Rama-Tut and Kang and He Who Remains. It was talked about that was at one point in the script and it got cut. Another theory we may have had, Gore the God Butcher coming in to take out a bunch of these Egyptian gods from the Ennead. Another thing they considered but was cut. Josh,
really? Was that in it?
Yeah, I
didn't know that.
Not 100% in, but it was something they talked about including at one point. So Josh, I want to throw it to you first. Do you wish either of these had been included in the show?
Oh yeah, dude, of course. I mean, Moon Knight is kind of an interesting show for me. I've never liked the show as much and yet still felt unsatisfied with it. So look, it's a weird situation. I mean, part of me wants to just be like, Feige, what are you doing? But
They gave
I
you
actually
Professor X. They gave you John Krasinski. In a
it's
way,
not enough. It's not enough.
It's not enough
But
for you.
no, it's not. But I
Never
will
enough.
say, to be fair though, like, so my perspective on this has, I think, changed since Feige said at CinemaCon that they're at a 10-year retreat or something like that. So look, we've been hearing a lot of this stuff, right? There was stuff cut from Moon Knight, there's stuff cut from the other shows, there's stuff cut from the movies. And my thoughts on this are that I'm pretty forgiving of it because I actually think it's mostly like pandemic restrictions and also that they're still finalizing things, right? They shifted a lot of movies around, shows around. I think they're still finalizing it. But with that said, my hope is that we do get back to a place with Marvel where more of that connective tissue is there and fun, because I think there's a reason these writers and people are talking about it after the fact. Like the dude that did Falcon and Winter Soldier, he did kind of a similar thing where he came out and kind of teased out some other cool things that would be in there because their fans were all just fans, you know. And I think they want that. I think we want that. And my overall take is that it will get better.
I like it. I like it. What about you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Gore just showing up randomly would have worked, you know. I really don't, because we know who he is, but there would have been so many people watching that were like, oh, great, Christian Bale, but who the hell is he? What's happening? So yeah, just having him show up, I mean, from a narrative point of view, I don't think it makes that much sense. I think having Arthur Harrow kill the Ennead just works better for the plot. Just works better for the plot. What was your other question before I go?
What did you think of Moon Knight as a whole?
All right, yeah, it was great. No, I did quite enjoy it. I didn't really like that. I was one of the people who didn't like the finale. And I loved the season up until that point. But I just thought most Disney Plus finales, I'm just kind of meh on, you know. Sure. I mean, Wanda Vision just let me know exactly what was going to be happening with these finales, and they don't really take that many risks, I don't think.
What do you think about the Kang stuff, though? Do you think they should have cut the Kang the Conqueror stuff?
Yeah, because I mean, I don't really know if it helps the narrative that much. I think the narrative that we got was pretty good. It was self-contained. I just don't know if having Kang pop up as well would have worked that well.
I feel like there's a way that they could do it where it works. You know, you don't have to like devote a whole plot.
I mean, it would probably be a post-credit scene. Really?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. And that was a post-credit scene, the Gore one, that I had been kind of predicting from the beginning, and I didn't get it. But Garrett, I'm interested in your perspective on this because Gore the God Butcher has been one of your most anticipated characters to enter the MCU in a very long time. And you're also incredibly high on Moon Knight. This is a top tier project for you. So would you like to have seen that added in, or are you kind of happy they kept it to the plot that they were giving us the whole time?
I think there was a place for it if they made an effort to connect to the larger MCU as a whole more often. But that wasn't what they were going for. And they wanted to tell this like contained story. And I think Mohamed Diab like said that in an interview. And so I think it would have felt like a little bit weird at the end to have this like massive tie-in to not even something like anyone has seen yet to a future project. I think it could have thrown people for a loop. I obviously would have just been stoked as hell to see it. And so that's my bias. But I'll wait. It's coming up. We're going to get them soon. So
they are coming soon.
Can I ask a question to the whole panel? Because like, do you guys think, because I understand they're saying that, do you really think that the reason some of this stuff's not in there is because they want to tell singular stories? Like that seems to be something they keep saying, like Doctor Strange wasn't in WandaVision because they wanted to just focus on Wanda, or, you know, they didn't put some maybe crazy stuff in Falcon the Winter Soldier because they wanted it to just live with those characters. Do you really think that's what's going on? Because I'm actually kind of skeptical of that answer from them.
I think it makes the most sense for Moon Knight, and I'll argue it for Moon Knight and not necessarily for the other projects. But I think in my head, like Mohamed Diab's pitch for this initially was like, hey, I want this to be more surrounding Egyptian culture. I want to do our job in telling this correctly, and then also focusing on the dissociative identity disorder aspect. And so I think that was originally his plan. I don't want to like put words in anyone's mouth, but in my head, that's kind of how it went. And I think it worked well for this story. But I'm not going to make excuses for any of the other projects.
Do you
I think
think
it
the
makes
other ones
sense.
did that though? Do you think they cut it for the reason? Because like what I'm specifically asking, I guess, is like, do you think that's really the reason that they cut it?
I think it makes sense. I think it would necessarily not be the sole reason, but it factors in. Like you look at phase 4 as a whole so far, they really are focusing on character driven stuff, like plot points. Like they're basically all character studies. Wanda Vision was a study on grief. Spider-Man No Way Home was basically that as well, and understanding responsibility. Through Eternals and Black Widow, there's so many different things that at the end of the day, yes, there's some crazy action going on, but they're really focusing on the inner characteristics of these characters. So I do think that makes sense. When you look at like WandaVision, for an example, and the original schedule had WandaVision leading up directly into Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness right after it. I think they probably were planning on having Doctor Strange in that when it did lead up to it directly. Sure. But all of a sudden, when it's not going to be coming that quick, why have that in there? Let's make this a character study, kind of like it has been throughout the whole show. And I don't know if that necessarily started as the plan, but I think kind of that was an adjustment halfway through that they've chosen to stick to.
Yeah, because I mean, even the way stuff's been reordered does kind of, I think, affect the films and their reception. I put out a tweet before just with a poll in it saying, if the original release order of Loki, then Doctor Strange, then Spider-Man No Way Home, if that had have been kept, would the Illuminati have been better received? Because let's be honest, the Illuminati is probably the thing that people don't really like from Multiverse of Madness. But if you had Loki teasing, little kid Loki Gator, that kind of thing, and then building up to the Illuminati where it's like, ooh, we're getting a bit more cameos, it's starting to really connect. And then you have No Way Home where it's like, wow, these are massive cameos playing major parts in the movie. If that would have worked better to build towards it rather than being the order that we got it in. I personally think it would have, but Sony kind of were like, no, this movie needs to come out.
Yeah, I guess like the reason I ask or whatever is just because like I feel like Loki is probably the most complete put together Disney Plus show we've gotten, and it literally drops one of the most important Marvel characters like basically randomly in its last episode and does exposition with that character. You know what I mean? And I still think it's the best one, and I think it sort of has that balance of doing a show about Loki, which that show is definitely about Loki, but it also tees up massive things for the MCU. And I think that maybe if in a world where Feige knew that things were changing and like he's just trying to grasp it and pull it all together, that like Loki represented his best effort to do what he actually wants to do with these shows. Like I kind of think that the answer of we just want to focus on story is a better answer to tell people than, oh yeah, things are crazy. It's really hard to make all this work the way we did before. Do you know what I mean? I really believe that like that answer is not true, and that it more has to do with restrictions and also the changing of the the slate and things like that, because I don't think this is the quality that Feige wants. It's just the reality of where we're at in the world. But that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And Josh, the nerd vendors are going wild in the chat right now, and I absolutely love it. So thanks to the nerd vendors for showing out. If you're watching this on Twitch, make sure you subscribe to the feed. Make sure you hit that follow button. People listening on YouTube later on who couldn't catch it live, help us combat the YouTube algorithm overlord, so that when people search Josh and Paul's names, they see ours up there too. So hit that like button. We're spoiled right now with these amazing guests we have on the show, and we're spoiled with the content we're getting as well. Before we dive into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, I want to know from Josh and Paul, Garrett and I have been talking about it lots, and we're going to be covering both of these shows on our pod. We're going to have some interviews coming up for Ms. Marvel, hopefully. Josh, what are your hype levels at for Ms. Marvel?
Ooh, not very high, but I'm not trying to be like toxic about it or be like, oh, dude, this is the end of Marvel or anything like that. I kind of just think that it's a show that really seems like it's made for a different crowd, mostly like a younger crowd. Um, I'm a little bit like about her powers changing, but I understand, I think, why they're doing it, and I'm sure Kamala Khan will be awesome in like the Marvels and in MCU moving forward. I think she might even be a part of like what they do with the Young Avengers, maybe, because they're, it feels like they're kind of gonna take Champions and Young Avengers and kind of smush them together. So, like, frankly, I'm down. Oh, is there a cat attack? Oh my
Yeah.
god, was there a cat attack?
He was going right over my keyboard. I had to give him
Dang.
I had to grab him off before he clicked any buttons.
Dang. No, I mean, I'm gonna watch the show. I don't know how much coverage I'm gonna do of the show, just to be honest, because it really does seem like very much geared for like a younger audience. So that's my take on it, I guess.
Yeah, it's coming out at a weird time as well. I don't think I'm gonna have time to really go that in depth on it either, just because it's kind of sandwiched. It's releasing some days the same day as ObiWan, and The Boys is coming out on Fridays as well. So it's like, how the hell am I going to do this? So I don't even know if I'm going to have a chance to cover it. I haven't had a chance to cover the trailers, and I'm just kind of weighing up, do I do this?
That's fair. That's one of the benefits that we've had with our site is we've had a ton of new fantastic writers and content creators hopping on with TikTok, and it's really helped us expand our content. And we're going to be hopefully doing interviews with for The Boys and Ms. Marvel. We've been in contact with the reps for some of the people involved with those shows. But ObiWan as well is another one we are very excited to dive into. And it sounds like for both of you that hits your hype levels a little higher. But Garrett, you had an interesting perspective on kind of similar to what Paul and Josh were saying and the difference of Ms. Marvel. And I know you, like myself, think it's a good thing that they're branching out a little bit on the types of show they're doing.
Yeah, I'm cool with it. I mean, we all grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons, and you know, that's how I assume most of us got involved with this, or our love started, or you're playing with toys, or you know, it usually comes at a young age. And so I'm excited for, like, my girlfriend and I were talking, we were babysitting her niece a couple weeks ago, and like we wanted to watch some MCU stuff, but her mom was like, oh, she can't watch that yet. And we were like, oh wow, okay. So I'm excited to like be able to like have a show to watch with her when we go over there. And I think it's all right that there's content that's not made for like us, and you know, it's cool if you sit it out. It's cool if you don't care about it as much. It is what it is. But I think if you're hating, like, not you guys aren't, I know that, but I know there is a group of people that like hate this show, or like don't want it to come out because it's not made for them. And I think, you know, I think you guys should that group needs to look inside themselves a little bit maybe, and realize like what made you a fan of these kind of things in the first place. And, you know, there's a massive generation of kids that like this will be their first introduction into the MCU. And I'm stoked for that. You know, we're all fans of this. So the more it grows, the more people that enjoy it, the more content we get. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Big time. And yeah, I'm personally excited for it because my inner child has never really left the teen drama type shows. I've kind of always liked anyways. So I'm excited to dive into this one. And Josh, I know you have some conflicting feelings about the other show coming up, ObiWan. Where is your excitement rate for this one?
Ooh, man. Okay, so ObiWan's interesting because I go back and forth between being like 10 out of 10 hyped. Like even this morning, like I just shared a clip about where Ewan McGregor's talking about his experience with the prequels back then and how weird it was because like he didn't have access to fandom the way that he does now. And he was just like, man, like people really didn't like those movies, and that sucked. And it took me 15 years to meet all the people that love those movies. And like as a huge fan of those movies, like that is awesome. And there's a lot of aspects of Kenobi and like bringing Hayden back that like literally it's like the best of the best. Do you know what I mean? And so I'm really, really high on it. But then, you know, we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, and I'm not going to go into the specific spoilers or leaks, but there's an aspect that could be happening in the show that just as a fan, I really am not a fan of. And so I'm trying to like balance expectations. Of course, you got to see a thing before you can judge it. And like leaks and rumors are never equivalent of what the experience is like in, watching something that's put together. So there's, I'm trying to be optimistic about it, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that like a lot of the wind has gone out of my sails from that. And I just feel like it's a decision that probably won't bother a ton of different folks, but for me personally as a fan, like I just can't hide how much it has affected how I look at the show. You know what I mean? So I'm trying.
How much do you trust those leaks?
Pretty
You've
good.
seen the last episode.
No. I haven't seen the last episode, but they're coming from pretty reliable people.
Okay.
And I feel like they're probably real. Yeah.
The thing is, though, with ObiWan, and this was always going to be the risk with doing ObiWan.
Yep.
We know both sides of that story, and this is sandwiched between them. So we know we've got A New Hope, and it all has to line up with that. So, like, I'm going into it knowing, well, it needs to get to this point at the end. Luke's not going to get caught by the Empire. Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, they're not going to have that big of a fight where one of them's badly messed up. Obi-Wan's not going to lose, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it is kind of just sandwiched in between that. Whereas the Book of Boba Fett, I thought like, well, we don't know this story. We don't know how this ends up. So I think Obi-Wan does kind of have some difficulties with it. Just in terms of you've just left Revenge of the Sith. You've got a couple of years in between, and then A New Hope's coming. And it's in between that, and it's like, how far can they really go with it? So I think it'll be good. I'm hyped for it, but I'm not expecting it to be like, you're gonna find out that Obi-Wan and the Emperor are brothers or something.
Like, bro, you read the leaks? No,
oh crap! I shouldn't have said that.
Imagine. No, my thoughts on that are like kind of, if I think about it that way, like my hype levels for the show are just gonna drop. So the way I have to think about it is like I'm excited for how they tie it into the other canon stuff that we've gotten, like Fallen Order and stuff, like because there's a lot to play with there.
Yes.
So like we know like this end and we know this end, but there's also like a this point. And I feel like if we go that way, we can get some exciting content. And so that's how I have to view it to be like, all right, I'm excited for it. Because if I'm going to be honest with you, my mind is like so to Ahsoka. Like I'm even past Andor, and I just want to watch Ahsoka.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
It's kind of like a comic, when you get the Star Wars comics. You've read them? You've all read them. But like the Obi-Wan, there's an Obi-Wan Star Wars comic where he fights Black Chrysanthemum. And that I think it'll be that level. Obviously, when you're reading that comic, you just kind of your hype levels at that because it needs to go this certain way. And that's just kind of how I feel about the show. I think it'll be good, but I'm not expecting it to rewrite the entire Star Wars history.
I wish I could come at it from that angle. I think that's like one of the built-in problems for the Star Wars brand is that I think there are a lot of people like me that literally consider almost everything that Star Wars attempts to do as like sacred ground. You know what I mean? It's like what we were talking a little bit about, like with the Tolkien thing too. It's like, man, like you're coming into a very important sacred ground within my psyche. You know what I mean? And I wish I could just be like, oh yeah, it'll probably be fun, like Kenobi and Vader and stuff like that. But I'm looking at it like this is a hidden chapter in the gospel. And what is in this chapter of the gospel? You know what I mean? And so it's like, oof, it's a tough one, man. Star Wars has a kind of unique problem as a brand with that regard. So
they're definitely tiptoeing a tight line. And Garrett, I'm happy you brought up Fallen Order because that's just one of my favorite Star Wars property at all. And your guy Connor for the Agents of Fandom, he's going to be streaming, I believe, finishing the game Fallen Order on this Twitch stream later today. So if that's something that's interests you, tune into that as well because Connor's been absolutely ripping through that game. So you can tune into him finishing it up, and I can't wait for that sequel. But yeah, I'm excited for this as well because obviously there's some continuity stuff that's going to be tough for them to juggle, but Revenge of the Sith is my favorite Star Wars movie. The prequels have they got some issues in them. Obviously, I think most of them are writing based, not acting based. I've always loved Hayden. I've always loved Ewan McGregor. And so, yeah, I can't wait to see both of them on screen again. but it's time. It's time for what everybody came for. It's time for us to talk Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So before we get into all the different details and our theories and our Easter eggs, our hot takes, I just want some general thoughts, because it's been like I've seen this twice now, but Garrett, we've talked about it off air. We haven't linked up to talk about it on air yet. What did you think of this movie?
Yeah, I was a fan of it. I enjoyed it the first time. There's, everybody says it's messy and there's flaws. Of course there's flaws. Every movie has flaws if you want to pick it out. But the flaws in this movie did not take away from my experience. And then I saw it the next night and it held up just as well. And so I enjoyed it. And to not say anything spoilery, that's all I'll say right now, but I can't wait to get into it because there's like so much to unpack here. And it was like I came out with more questions and answers yet again, but this time I was like much more satisfied with it. Like it was much more okay with me. Whereas like Eternals, I was like, it really took away from my first viewing of Eternals, where I was like, no, I expected so much. I loved Eternals on my second viewing, but this time when I didn't get the answers, I was like, you know what? I enjoyed that ride, so it's cool.
Yeah. I think the big issue with the movie is people have different expectations of what they think should have been in it, and they're judging it on what they think it should be rather than what it is. Like Moth Culture, they posted a tweet out the other day like, look what was taken from us, and it was Tom Cruise cameo and Spider-Man cameo, and it's like Josh will tell you that stuff was never in the movie, and if anyone said they were and put money on Tom Cruise being in that film, they were an idiot.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
They're not going to film scenes with Tom Cruise and cut Tom Cruise out. Like
exactly.
Let's be real.
Exactly. Yeah. That would be
Josh,
no
I tuned
tease
into
in the
your
trailer.
members only stream the other day, right as you were basically saying. And I did it anyway. I'm an idiot. I was told not to bet the money, and then I bet the money. I'm an idiot.
I hit him up like, I don't. Tom Cruise isn't in the film, mate.
A lot of people did. Actually, it's funny because if you're ever in touch with like a lot of people that know things and you want to know like what's what, make a $500 bet, because everybody shows up 2 minutes too late and tells you what it is. So but you know what's funny, like on that point too, like I think there is actually a conversation to be had here about that and about expectations and all that sort of stuff. But I will just say that I feel pretty strongly, given a lot of evidence, that there was way more than just an idea of Tom Cruise being in the movie, that those two teams talked. And I do believe he came to Atlanta to either meet or at least do something, maybe even test footagey. Now, I don't think he shot anything, obviously, for the movie itself. But like yesterday, right, Michael Waldron, there were all those comments that came out of the, what was it? I forget, Rolling Stone article. And I saw a lot of people like spinning that article, basically claiming that he confirmed in that interview that fans totally made that up. But if you actually read the interview, that is not at all what he's saying. And he actually slipped up because he gives a really weird like answer, non-answer. And then the Rolling Stone guys like really tries to pin him on it. And it's like, so wait a minute, you're saying that fans made it up, but you asked Kevin Feige about putting Tom in the movie? What does that mean? And like, I think he kind of like backtracks a little bit, but like, I'm damn sure that that was something that was seriously considered. And unfortunately, again, because of like the pandy and maybe the plans shifting, that ultimately was removed probably a long time ago in the process. But for me personally, like, look, I think if anything, I'm one of the people that has the most right to be upset about a lack of presumed cameos, because A, I lost $500, but B, because I was really excited, man. Like I sort of, part of the reason why I even made that bet against all logic was that like I'm like kind of like a huge, well, that too, but also because I'm like a huge fan. Like the fanboy in me wrapped my head around the idea of Tom Cruise Iron Man, and I went to town, bro. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't help myself. I was like, Feige's hidden it from everybody, and he's got some secret cut where Tom Cruise is in there. And I like fooled myself into believing all these different things. But having said all that, I loved this movie, dude. Like, cameos or not, I felt like it was so good, but also those cameos, like that Illuminati, I think is handled in such a beautiful, perfect way. Like what I describe this movie as to some people is it's trying to do a lot of the same things the Age of Ultron did, which is essentially like teeing up a ton of stuff for the future for all these characters, right? But it's doing it in a way better way because it's so focused on Strange. Like I think the movie is this beautiful balance of Sam Raimi cinema, modern pop culture sensibilities, setting up massive connective tissue in the greatest franchise we've ever seen, and doing it all in this really beautifully balanced way. And I'm not butthurt at all, maybe a little bit, but I'm not butthurt enough to take away my enjoyment of the film, that those things and those cameos weren't in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate how you brought up that you wanted it so bad that you really convinced yourself of all these different things, because I think that's a pretty important theme of the movie as well. And we're going to talk about Wanda's arc and how a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people loved it. But I mean, imagine if you were corrupted by the Darkhold, how sure you would have been that Tom Cruise was in that movie. I mean, he could have made it happen.
Dude,
if he had the
maybe it
Darkhold.
was the Darkhold's fault. Now I'm rethinking this whole thing. Skylar, no.
That's your out, bro.
Yeah, that's my out. For sure.
And so on my first watch, that was something that I thought, I feel like a lot of people missed that. Like maybe they didn't emphasize it enough. And then in my second watch, I counted like over a dozen times that they brought up the power of the Darkhold and its corrupting abilities. So that's another thing we're going to get into. But the first Wanda thing I want to touch on, because we've already talked so much about cuts and things like that, is apparently this movie was going to start with Mordo basically hunting down Wanda and her taking him out right off the bat, and that was going to be the continuation of the post-credit scene from the first Doctor Strange, and they didn't have it. Paul, what do you think of that choice to start us off with Defender Strange in America as opposed to the Mordo scene with Wanda?
Yeah, so I actually did a video on all the plot leaks about October last year, and that was one of the main things I talked about the movie opening with. And I think it works better without it, to be honest, because it lets Mordo do stuff in the future, and the twist comes when you experience the twist of Wanda being the villain through Strange. Whereas it's kind of doing the same thing twice. It's revealing to the audience that Wanda is the villain at the start of the movie, and then Strange later goes to meet her, where it's revealed that she's the villain of the movie to the character. So it just kind of, I mean, this movie just moves. It's just constantly moving. And I think that would have slowed it down starting it that way. And it probably would have been confusing to have that open the movie and then jump to the gap junction, is it called? With Defender Strange and America. Yep. So you have that and then jump to the gap junction and then you jump to Strange waking up in a nightmare. It just doesn't really flow that well, I don't think. So yeah, cut the crap out. Cut that and the Tom Cruise cameo.
No!
Cinematically, I think it makes a ton of sense. I agree with you. Like, there's a part of me that's still bitter that we didn't get that. Like, was that post-credit scene there at this point? However, it's like you said, as long as we get Mordo in the future, and that cut means that he's not actually dead now, and they just decided to not do that part of the story, then I'm good with it. Because something I noticed as well in my second watch that I didn't notice in my first was that the Illuminati Mordo, he's the only one that didn't die. The last time we see him is him saying, I understand why your universe's Mordo hated you. Like, that's the last we see of him, and then he's out. So that's two Mordos now that they go off into the distance.
The Multiverse of Madness.
Doing. Exactly. The Mordoverse
of Madness.
Get
it greenlit.
Josh, get it greenlit. I'd rather Mordoverse of Madness than Morbius verse of Madness. Like,
dude. Morbius sweep, dude. The summer of Morbius. Let's go.
Josh, what did you think about the decision not to include it, and what do you think is up for Mordo in the future now?
So I think it's a brilliant cut. I totally agree with Paul's take on it. I think that there's, first of all, the pace and the clip of the movie, I think, is incredible. It's one of its strongest suits. Is that, like, dude, like, it's an experience. It just grabs you and you just go. And I love that. Like, I love it. Like, there's even the scene where, like, Wong is like, we must fortify, and then it goes like right into those drums. I was like, dude, this movie is like this movie's intense.
Fortify your minds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude,
They
love
don't
it.
even
sick.
really prepare.
Yeah,
They're like,
they don't.
they show back Comatage. It's so fast, that scene. They show back Comatage. They're
Mhm.
like, she's coming. Who are these wizards? They're from Hong Kong and London. They maybe should have cut that bit. You don't even
Yeah.
get introduced to Rintra, and then they just say, "Oh, she's yeah."
It's
Just-
true.
You
No,
don't
you're
have
right.
half an hour of them like sitting before the battle around a campfire going, "I used to be friends with Wanda. I don't know what happened to her." Just like, no,
Yeah.
get into it. Get the fight going.
Yeah, and
And-
I think all that cutting is good. Like, I think all of that cutting, like, because you're right, there's probably a ton of stuff with like Rintra and some of that other stuff. Because they even have like Marvel Legends figures, I think, for some of those sorcerers, and you spend zero time with them,
Rintra
But,
and Sarah were the two
Yeah.
characters that they seem to cut a lot of, because
Yeah.
there was like a bit of a caress when Sarah caressed Wong's face, but
Mhm.
like Sarah's supposed to be Wong's love interest. That she's his love interest in the comics.
Mhm.
It was slightly implied in the movie, but I think there
Mhm.
was a lot of that dialogue between the two of them that ended up getting cut, and that
Yeah.
seems like it was a conscious choice from Sam Raimi to be like, no, this is go start to finish, just like
Yeah.
you were talking about, Josh.
Yeah,
Was
and I
Sarah
think
the one
it was-
who stabbed the Darkhold?
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, because she's got a Funko Pop, and I was thinking,
Yes.
why is she got a Funko Pop? Because she's in the movie like 2 seconds, but
Yeah.
it makes sense that they would have a far more expanded role for her.
Yeah, and Rintra too, because like it
Mm.
seems weird to do the CGI on like a Minotaur
Yeah,
and then to just have him be like in the background of most of the scenes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with that. And to the point of the cutting the Mordo thing, I really enjoy, like you said, Paul, how we're revealed that Wanda is the villain. And it's
Pretty
something that
stupid, but nice.
it's something that we've seen before, right? Like multiple times, but I love the way they do it. It's like so
Oh,
quick.
Yo,
And
they
then
act
it-
the shit out of that scene. They are
Yeah.
they are both so good in that scene. Like, that scene has no right to be as good as it is, in my opinion.
It
Yeah.
was so fun watching Strange's reaction to her saying America the second time around, because I didn't even notice it until she said it the first time. Like,
Mhm.
I'd forgot that he didn't say her name, but then the second time, obviously knowing how it goes, watching Benedict Cumberbatch play that and just slowly, and then Wanda just
and he
without even
stops
seeing his
too, and she
face.
keeps walking.
Yeah, yeah,
oh,
so sick.
fantastic.
yeah. It was awesome.
Mhm.
It was awesome. Yeah.
And so
All right.
it seems like another one of the things that they cut. My understanding is that the cuts from like the big cuts from the movie were Rintra and Sarah. They were supposed to be more. And this is related to like not cameo stuff, but and then as well as that Mordo scene. In related to cameo stuff, what I'm under the impression of is that the reshoots were basically for John Krasinski. Like, that was not the only reason, but that was prime reason number one. Is he came to them and said, what do you think of this? What do you think of this idea? The people love it, and now my schedule's open. And they're like, heck yes, let's do it. And then the same thing, Anson Mount's schedule freed up, and 1 for 1 on scoops in my career called Black Bolt was going to be in the movie, and he was, and now I'm retiring from the scoop game, sticking to theories and interviews. But
Yeah.
those seems like they were the big reasons for the reshoots. But before John Krasinski's Reed Richards was in the movie, the final member of the Illuminati was supposed to be Balder the Brave from another universe, which I think would have been super interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think of that one, Paul? Would you have liked to see Balder in the movie in some capacity, even though maybe not as one of the leaders of the Illuminati?
Yeah, just mainly for who played him, to be honest. No one knows. And I know for a fact that Balder was in the movie, but the person I spoke to, who they wouldn't tell me who it was. They were like, I'm not telling you, but here's a little thing for you. So yeah, he was 100% in the movie, and there were more chairs. You can count there's a discrepancy between the Illuminati chairs and the members that they kind of cut around, but in the original trailer, I'm sure there was 7 chairs, and they kind of cut it to make it look like there's 6. So yeah, would have liked to have seen it. Don't know who it was, but I think that would have been cool. But they would have messed Wanda up, surely. Surely they would have stood more of a chance against Wanda.
Well, another thing that I find interesting too is one of our good friends, former guest of the podcast, Richard Evans from the direct.com. He just wrote an article that Marvel Studios, I'm reading the headline right now. Marvel Studios considered including Namor in the Multiverse of Madness on the Illuminati roster, reveals writer Michael Waldron. I think Marvel has other plans for him in the MCU. So what's interesting to me is maybe this is another Waldron slip up. Maybe this is me just looking into it too close regarding John Krasinski's future as Reed Richards. If they didn't include Namor because of the other plans for him in the future, that kind of tells me that John Krasinski's Reed Richards, Anson Mount's Black Bolt, none of these characters are in the plan for the future because they were specifically there to get killed off as the 838's Illuminati.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, from what I understand, like John may do it and he may not. I think that they're kind of like, the rumor is that they're still trying to like work that out exactly. But I think that I think the exercise in cameos for this film was to test out what they could do, but also to make other actors like, I think what Feige ultimately wants, this is all about Secret Wars, right? And he wants as many cameo people that have played these characters in the past as possible to come back and do their roles again for Secret Wars. But in order to do that, he has to show that A, it's really easy for the actor, B, that they'll be showered with love from the fans. So I think that like that's sort of his long game, because like the reports are they reached out to like a ton of people. Like they reached out to Hugh. Like Hugh Jackman was considered for the film. He said nah, but apparently he's still maybe open to returning in the future. So I think a lot of this stuff, including what they did with Krasinski, it was probably like, okay, you can't make it for principle. That's fine. But what if we did a whole bunch of reshoots? Because like I think his face is superimposed on his body. Like if you watch that scene again, like when he's like talking to Steven, like he's like making slight movements and his body behind him like isn't moving at all. So it kind of feels like that was shot in a very like easy way for John. Like he didn't have to come in there, assemble the whole set again and do all these different things. Like I think they found a way to make it super easy for him. He probably shot the scene where he fights her or stands in front of her, actually in full costume. But yeah, I think when it comes to those 838 characters, I actually wouldn't be surprised if you saw all of them again, including the ones she killed. And I have a theory, and I actually have a video coming out later today on how all of those characters could be brought back to life within that universe. And partially it could be the fact that Mordo is still alive. So yeah, I think if they have fun, like this is part of the magic of Marvel, right? Like it's like a playground. These actors love it. It's an incredible experience for them most of the time. So that's an important part of producing that Feige fully understands. And so I think that he's trying to get everybody to feel like, hey, I would love to go do that and it would be amazing. So if Anson liked it, I see no reason why he wouldn't come back again, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, as bad as that Inhumans show was, Anson Mount, he does well as Black Bolt, and I just absolutely love when actors are committed to their craft, and he created his own language for Black Bolt that was significantly different from ASL, and he studied ASL to make sure there weren't any overlaps because he felt it wouldn't make sense because he wasn't from Earth, and that type of commitment to the roles. And as a comic book fan, I absolutely love it. And regarding Reed, I feel like I'd rather see Krasinski direct it than be Reed Richards. Just based on, I think he looks super cool, but I don't hear him as Reed personally. My two favorite I've heard for that role are Glenn Howerton and Gordon Levitt, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Those are my two favorite for that spot. But before, we'll talk more about the Illuminati in a little bit. One of the most controversial, or I don't know if controversial is the right word, but polarizing topics about this movie is Wanda's arc. A lot of people feel like after Wanda Vision, it didn't really set up for this type of role. And I kind of feel like, did we watch the same show? But yeah, that's we'll get to my thoughts after. Garrett, I want to know what you think.
Yeah, I'm on the same page as you. I think, I saw it first out of you, me, and Ruben. And one thing that I said was people have been griping about, where the Wanda Vision story and how it flows into Multiverse of Madness. And I think that that's crazy because I think that it makes a complete sense. So I don't know. I mean, the Darkhold, obviously, like you said, they mentioned it like 15 times in the movie. It's a corrupting force, and she's reading it literally at the end of Wanda Vision. So for all the time between Wanda Vision and like all of Spider-Man, all of that time, like she's reading the Darkhold, she's dream walking, she's corrupting herself. So like, yeah, I think it makes total sense.
Yeah, and she's on her own as well. She's not she doesn't have anyone else to talk to. She's just purely getting corrupted by the Darkhold the entire time.
Yeah, she's alone with her grief.
Yeah.
And something that was pointed out to me too that I thought was super cool from the post-credit scene of WandaVision, when you hear Billy and Tommy yelling, "Mom, help." At the end of WandaVision, we're assumed to think that they are calling out to her and she's trying to help them, which of course, because it's from Wanda's perspective, that's what she thought as well. We see at the end of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, that mom help was Billy and Tommy screaming to their mom because they were terrified of her. Yeah. So that was a just incredible little thing I thought they did there. Josh, what did you think about Wanda in this movie and her arc?
Oh, dude, I love it. I love it. Like, so it's weird because I can agree with people that she's one-dimensional in the movie because she's super one-dimensional. But
one-dimensional. One-dimensional.
I'm stealing that. That's why he's the best.
I've already dropped it, mate.
There it is.
Yeah. But yeah, so that works for me because it's like a horror movie vibe, and she's like a force of nature. Like she just really helps to push the movie, and it's really scary, dude. Like she's scary. Like the second time I watched it, when she kills the Illuminati and you hear Reed's head pop at the end of like the thing, like, dude, there was like audible gasps in the theater, and like people were like kind of shocked by it. So I think it's great. I do think though, this is one of those examples where Marvel knew they were maybe going to step in it a little bit, because like with the dusting, right, and the snap, that's obviously a massive deal, a huge part. It kicks off the whole events of Infinity Gauntlet, right? So Feige knew that was crazy, and there's a reason it's crazy, because like you're reading comics and all of a sudden like half of the heroes all disappear. You know what I mean? Like that's wild. That's the reason it's wild, is because you don't expect it. It feels, dark. It feels crazy. He did that with Infinity War. Infinity War was a movie that you walked out of, and I saw a lot of kids and a lot of parents just being like, dude, what? Like, what happened? You know what I mean? And as a big comic book sweaty, like, you live for that moment. You love it when the normies intersect with something that you experienced a long time ago in a book that really meant something to you. And House of M is very similar. Wanda's arc is very similar. She is ridiculous, crazy, horrible, unstable, not good. It's not a good look. Like, and many comic book fans were just waiting for that shoe to drop, and I think it drops here, and it was awesome, dude. You know what I mean? So, but
mouth.
Yeah, dude. Like, dude, it's brutal. But
that was
go down now as like a Darth Vader like figure. Like, we will talk about this. This is a significant moment in pop culture for that character, and I think it's ballsy for Marvel to do so.
I'm very, very happy you have brought up Darth Vader, because later today I'm going to have an article coming to our website, a character study comparing Anakin Skywalker and Wanda Maximoff and their similarities, both from a personality standpoint and a story arc standpoint. So yeah, that's one I've been excited to write all week. I've been putting things together. So that's going to be coming to Agents of Fandom later today. Anakin Skywalker, Wanda Maximoff character study. But maybe this is recency bias, but because I said similar about Oscar Isaac, but I really feel like Lizzie Olsen in this movie, that was maybe the best acting performance we have ever seen in the MCU. Like, the small little smirks she had after getting her way, just like the tiny run, small aspects like that, and the way she delivered her lines, the emotion in her eyes, it was just absolutely spectacular. And while yes, Wanda was the main antagonist in this movie, I don't think it can be overstated the Darkhold's effect. They brought it up very throughout various times in the show. Us Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans know all about the Darkhold and its corrupting abilities. And I really think that it's important to look at, this book was essentially written for her, the Scarlet Witch. Yeah. If there's what the Darkhold does is it warps your mind into entitlement and essentially an addiction of you need more of it, and it shapes what you think is right and what you want into that is correct, that is the way, this is the way. And I think Wanda's brain would be the most susceptible to that because of her power levels, because of what we saw at Mount Wundagore. And I think it's interesting to note that Wanda's kill count in this movie, while she is corrupted by the Darkhold, is in the dozens. It's the Illuminati. It's a couple people around the Illuminati. Most of the people in that initial scene, not everyone, of course, but most of the people in that initial scene, and I'm not justifying all of Wanda's killings, I'm just trying to add perspective. Most of the people in that scene at the beginning, that's fighting at Kamartaj. Yeah, they almost all come back at the end. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah.
When we see Strange with the Darkhold,
yeah,
multiple different Stranges, his kill count was in the trillions.
Yes.
Multiple different universes completely destroyed because of his actions. We saw the same thing in What If with Supreme Strange. So I do think that's kind of important to note, that trauma mixed in with all-powerful dark arts books, that has a lot of impact into it. And I think that'll probably play a role in Wanda's future redemption, because no, of course she is not dead. You know, I brought up the Black Bolt one as my favorite death in the Illuminati scene. Paul, when Wanda was just going to town on the Illuminati there, which one was your favorite?
Oh, well, my entire theater, we had a riot when Captain Carter died. We all stood up, started going, "What the hell is this? Brit English?" And we all started screaming. So yeah, that was quite a good one.
I'm repping England for you too. I got my Dubai,
yeah, baby.
I got my AFC Richmond jersey on.
There you go.
So yeah, well, thank you for, especially during these tough times where Captain Carter's dead. So that was quite a good one.
Would have done it to Captain America. I'm just gonna say it.
Loads of people were saying they didn't like that. I can do this all day. I liked it.
I loved it.
I liked it. Yeah.
I liked it more the second time. The first time I was like, do you gotta do that though?
Sorry to cut you off, but maybe my favorite part of the movie, just while we're on the note of Illuminati, because I forgot to say it, was the Days of Future Past line. To me, Days of Future Past is the most underrated superhero movie. And when I heard, just because someone stumbles and loses their way, I just absolutely lost it. But sorry, continue, Paul.
I don't know if it was so much the deaths that I liked. It was just the lines before it. So the bit where she was like, "What mouth?" The coldest line I've ever heard was the whole line about Sue Richards still being alive to raise the kids.
Dude, that was brutal. Yeah,
and then she just ripped him apart.
Yeah, it was brutal.
So, yeah, I think it was more that towards Reed. Probably Reed was my favorite death. You know what I mean? It just showed how powerful Wanda was, because we waited for these characters for so long, and then to just have them ripped away. You know, it's heartbreaking, but it just shows Wanda isn't messing around. She doesn't care about your fan favorite characters, your fan cast, your Mr. Fantastic.
She doesn't care about Tom Cruise Iron Man. No!
Exactly.
He took out Tom Cruise Iron Man before the movie even began.
I know. she's that powerful for sure.
Yeah. So it was probably Reed Richards, just for the setup and just how quickly she ripped him apart. He's the smartest man on earth.
Yeah.
You know, it poses as much danger to her as the world's smartest termite. See what I'm saying?
Nice little watch.
Note that down.
That line was unbelievably cold, and I also thought it was a kind of a cool nod that if there's anyone in the 838 universe that could take Wanda, might be that one of his kids that he's talking about there. But Josh, how about you? What were your favorite moments from Wanda's Illuminati massacre?
I probably have to agree. Reed's was fantastic. It's just so weirdly brutal. Like it's like he's like screaming, you know what I mean? And like it's over, and then his head pops. It's like, and that's the moment where you're like, yo, and even I think Captain Marvel like looks over at Captain Carter and she's like, oh my God, you know what I mean? So yeah, that line's pretty crazy. But I will say the Patrick Stewart death is ridiculous. And I don't know if you guys saw this, but like people have slowed that down, and she doesn't snap his neck. She rips his face in half. half of his face goes one way, half of his face goes the other way. It's crazy, dude. I was like, whoa. And she looks like
that one was the
really
one that like
bizarre.
scared the shit out of me the most.
Oh yeah, dude, it's terrifying. Like it's so terrifying. I love it. So yeah, I'd have to say that one's probably my favorite death.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. And I also love that they're like what I assume to be in her like Sokovia house as a child, where it's like all blown to rubble, and then that's where the other one's hiding. And then yeah, I saw that video where she like rips his head into the astral plane.
Yeah.
That is just so wild. But yeah, that and Black Bolt I think were my favorite. I do want to say though, I felt Captain Marvel should have had a better death. Like,
yeah, do you think she died there? Because like I interpreted that as maybe Wanda had exhausted all of her power with that blast or something, and so therefore she didn't have the protective abilities anymore, and so that smush like really did kill her. What do you guys think?
So that was something that I was quite angry about the first time that I watched it. I was sitting there being like, all these deaths were so cool. Our Captain Marvel took a punch in the face from Thanos and was just like, next. What do you got for me? And then I was like, this is stupid. But Ethan Simi, member of the Agents of Fandom, he's got his own podcast, 15 Minutes of Marvel. Great
happy
guy.
Birthday, by the way, Ethan. It's his birthday today.
Ethan's birthday today. Damn, happy birthday, Ethan.
Happy birthday, Ethan.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. He brought up something that I didn't notice the first time, and so I watched for the second time, and I definitely think he's right there. Is she was like, I don't know if stealing her powers is the right word, but it seemed like draining them. They were, they were getting like less and less and less. And then when she was falling, there was none of the glow left, and she sticks her arms out as if to shoot out the glow and to shoot out the beams. Nothing comes out, and that's when she like brings it back to brace herself and then gets crushed.
Okay, hear me out though. Why are we having to work so hard to like just get all the other deaths were cool, like just give her a cool death, you know? We're having to like pick at straws to be like, well, maybe she sucked her power. Like it wasn't implied enough if that was what they were doing. So like just go all out, you know, don't go 4/5 or whatever. That's just kind of how I feel. Like I get that could have been the case and it could have been what they were going for, but you know, you did all the other ones so well.
It was definitely the poorest delivered one, but regarding I also thought it was interesting too, just in terms of the Illuminati, that when I was going into this movie, I really thought they were going to be a multiversal Illuminati, but they were clearly just the versions from 838. And so
sort of, because they're technically cataloging the multiverse and have had encounters with other multiverses. So like I feel you, because I thought maybe that would be the case too, where like from different universes, but it's explained in the movie that would cause incursions, right?
Yes.
So it's just this group, but I still consider it to be a multiversal Illuminati because they're cataloging the multiverse. Like they're ready for Secret Wars. Like they're ahead of us. In that way. But
because they didn't have the snap.
Yes.
Yeah, correct.
They killed Thanos before he carried it out.
Yeah.
Right, but they might still have some of the gems, right? Or the stones, you know?
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so they've got the stones.
And I think that
5-year time gap where nobody did anything. So that's why they're so far ahead.
I also think that speaks a little bit to why they were so arrogant. Like Reed Richards, smartest man alive, giving up Black Bolt's powers. Why? Arrogance. That Peggy Carter, that wasn't the Peggy Carter that we've seen in our universe. I just look at the funeral scene from Captain America Civil War, where Sharon Carter is speaking at the funeral, and she talks about the quote that Aunt Peggy said to her about not compromising your beliefs. And that did not seem like the same Peggy here. The Peggy that we know didn't really seem like the type of person who'd be like, all right, Black Bolt, take out Strange. And so I definitely thought they were working hard to show that this is different than the people that we may have known, even though some of the faces are similar. Another interesting continuity thing that kind of I've been unsure about is I absolutely love that X-Men theme when we saw Professor X coming up, but a lot of people have theorized that is the X-Men 97 Professor X.
Oh, it is. They credit it at the end of the film. It's the 97 theme.
The 97 theme for sure. But what I'm wondering is to me, that won't make sense if that is the same Professor X from the cartoon, or to me, it would have to be just one that went through similar experiences, and now the X-Men 97 theme is going to be their theme that they're carrying through for the X-Men going forward. Because the reason I say that is because Professor X's universe had its own Scarlet Witch, and it was not that one. It had a Captain America, not a Captain Carter. It was also in the same universe as all the other animated shows, which had their own Reed Richards. So that would mean that Reed was also the animated Reed and things like that. There's a lot of continuity things that don't add up. So to me, it kind of has to be this is a variant that's almost the same, that's gone through almost the same experiences, hence the theme, hence the floating chair, stuff like that.
I think there's a lot of... No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go. I was going to bring it to a different topic, so you finished it out.
I was just going to say that I think there's a lot to be explored there, and I think that there are reasons that there's some stuff left vague in the movie, especially around the Illuminati, that I don't think is just on accident. Like, I think they might be still sorting that out. But like, if you like, there's some really wild stuff that happens in that original X-Men show where they go to like a nexus point in the universe, and the Beyonders there, or rather Immortus is there. And so like, there's like some really, really wild stuff, and the X-Men can be involved in really crazy stuff. So maybe while that probably very likely is not the Xavier from the 92 X-Men show or whatever, that we don't really know what's going on in 97. And there's all sorts of scenarios, bro. Like Charles from that 92 imprints his consciousness into the Charles of the, like wild stuff. And not to mention the fact that in the current iteration of the X-Men right now, they're immortal. Anytime a mutant dies, they literally are resurrected on Krakoa. So I'm not saying that like that's 100% like something that's going to go on there, but like, dude, like that Charles could be alive. All of them could be alive again, So it's just...
I think an interesting, I think exactly, I'm happy you brought up the imprinting of consciousness, because I think that nod to the Days of Future Past line kind of shows that Charles really could be interacting with any of his multiversal selves in ways that the other ones couldn't. Those other members of the Illuminati couldn't. So yeah, I think that's a really great point there. And my last Wanda point I want to mention, just because I thought it was so cool, because I'm fresh off.
No. It's my turn.
Too bad. I'm fresh off of talking with. It's super quick. I was fresh off of talking with Kat McNamara, who played Mia Queen in Arrow, and she was the lead in Shadowhunters as well. We were talking at the Sask Expo recently, and she was talking about the different contortionists that they had on Shadowhunters and how exceptionally talented they are and how much it adds to the horror element of the show. And that contortionist moment with Wanda when she was coming out of that reflection there with the mirror dimension, that was so unbelievably cool and scary. Right, we are back. Can you hear us, everyone? We're back.
All back. Some of us are back. Chat. 3/4 of us are back.
Yeah, Paul's
they cut Paul like Tom Cruise Iron Man. They were like,
yes, double me. This is what the world needs.
We got variant.
Well, what happened is, we apologize. Paul was about to talk some smack about Wanda. She got pissed, and she simply said, no more Paul.
No more Paul. Yeah, back.
No more Paul. And so one of the last things too, that the Terrigen stuff is definitely interesting, Garrett. That's what we were talking about, that they brought that up, where they seem to be going away from that in Ms. Marvel. And
yeah, they could have just easily not brought it up.
I think they're gonna, I think that was kind of like a chapter close to me. That seemed really to me like we are now closing the door on Inhumans until maybe someone shows up in Secret Wars. But to me, that really seemed like a closed book there.
That seems like an open book to me, because you could have just kept the book closed and not mentioned it at all. And everyone who didn't know Black Bolt would have just felt the same about him. And everyone who did know Black Bolt already knew that Terrigen isn't a thing in the MCU. So that seems like an open book to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think it just gave background to who he is, the Inhuman King, just by them saying it. But I definitely don't think they're going back to Terrigen stuff in the future. We got Paul back on the screen. Yeah, there we go. We got a couple things. We got a couple things to talk about before we get out of here. And I know we got stuff going on, so I want to progress us ahead here. It's a Doctor Strange movie, and we barely talked about the man himself, Doctor Strange. And so I brought up earlier about how we've seen how the Darkhold has corrupted him in other universes, stuff like that. I think it's very interesting the Strange we are getting here in our universe. This really does seem like all the other Stranges are Sorcerer Supremes. He's not.
Yeah.
I go back to that nod of Doctor Strange 1 where Ancient One, from Endgame actually, where the Ancient One says Strange was meant to be the best of us.
Yes.
This to me is setting up eventually that our Strange will be eventually the Sorcerer Supreme of the multiverse. Paul, what do you think about that statement? But then also just his arc, and what do you think of Doctor Strange in this movie?
Yeah, I think that really works, to be honest, because this movie is very much about him sort of seeing, you know, Christine says early on that he refuses to hand over the knife, which is basically him refusing to hand over control to people. And when the Illuminati talk about Thanos, they say Strange went at it alone, like always. So you can kind of see how him doing things on his own is very much detrimental to him as a character. And at the end, he hands things over to America and says, "You go do this." So maybe this whole journey is just about him learning that so he can progress to that point. I think that's a really good theory. Yeah, well done.
Awesome. Thank you. Josh, what do you think about Doctor Strange's arc in this movie, and what do you think we got going for him in the future?
So I love the arc in the film. I think it's way more complex, and just it's like what I want from a character study, because he's technically learning about himself via these other strangers. They're like a really good mirror to hold up against him, and he is absolutely different. Like, I think that they sort of brush over this, but Charles very likely read his mind and realized that he is different than their Stephen and maybe any other Stephen. And America says as such later on in the film, like, he's different. It doesn't matter about all those other Stevens. And yet he says to Christine, we are all the same, because I think he recognizes that he's still Steven. He's still going to have that arrogance, and he's still going to do this stuff. And he, after this whole movie, was super ready to do the Darkhold. You know what I mean? He was like, dude, I can handle it. It's fine. And that's Stephen Strange. And in the lead up to Secret Wars, one of the best characters in that whole thing is Steven. Steven does all sorts of questionable stuff. They erase Captain America's mind and boot him out of the Illuminati. He goes to sell his soul, but there's none left. Like, the demons are literally like, bro, you ain't got a soul. Like, it's not worth anything. He casts an unbelievable demonic spell that decimates and destroys the Justice League or the Squadron Supreme from another universe. And at the end of time, it's revealed that he was a person that was out there destroying worlds that were coming into other incursions. Just like Doom, he had taken upon himself to try to fix the whole thing. He's also a really important player in helping Doom to foster and create Battleworld, and ultimately to give Reed a chance to fight against Doom on Battleworld in the end. So, like, Steven's a really, really important character, but he's not solely heroic. He's not like,
okay, what's going on?
What the heck? Oh, I just heard Rob from Comic Explained or something. But yeah, there's a lot to that character, and I think they did it justice, man, because it's complex. Like, it's not simple, you know, with Steven. So I loved it, man. As a big Stephen Strange fan, like, I'm here for it. It's great.
I loved it too, and I'm happy they added the part about his sister. I'm happy we heard about that aspect of his origin, because one of my first experiences diving into Doctor Strange was the animated movie, and that in that arc, it's set in the Ultimate Universe, but in that arc, it's his sister dying that prompts him to become a doctor, because he couldn't save her, and that guilt and that trauma from not being able to save his sister is what led him to wanting to become a doctor. And then, of course, having not dealt with that trauma is what obviously leads to a lot of his arrogance. But I thought that was really awesome. And I forgot about that Professor X part to mention that earlier, because that was something I wanted to touch on too, was whether or not that was him reading Strange's mind, and or was it him when Wanda got there realizing that, oh my goodness, we stand no chance against this Wanda, maybe Strange will. And so I think that that's a interesting thing that they don't tell us, that they kind of leave us with. Maybe it's addressed in the future, or maybe it's for our headcanons. But I think that was a fun little tidbit they left us with. Garrett, what did you think of Strange's arc in this movie? And we touched on how he dived right into the Darkhold, and we see how that affects him right at the end of the movie with what seemed like a cliffhanger, until the post-credit scene kind of got took us off the cliff.
Yeah.
So what did you think about the arc, Gareth, and lead us into that post-credit scene?
I really enjoyed the arc. I think like Josh said, it's really complex, and there's a lot, like, I feel like every time I'm gonna watch it moving forward, I'm gonna pick like more out about it, because I do feel like there's a lot that they put into it to pay off. I was a big fan of the musical fight at the end. I had a friend text me and said, I wish that had more weight. And I was like, what do you mean? Do you wish it had more weight? And he was like, well,
It's
it
one
was
of the
like
coolest things I've ever seen in a movie, dude.
It was so
I
unbelievably cool.
I loved it. And I was like, what do you mean it need more weight? He was like, well, it was strange for strange. You know, I wanted to see some like power. And I was like, I think you're mistaken. I think it's not about who's more powerful. I think they're both like powerful as shit. I think it's about who's the more clever magic user and who's more like intuitive, and who like it wasn't about strength. It was about skill.
Yeah, that
and
little note wasn't a little music note. That was a beam of interdimensional, crazy mystical power.
yeah, I think that I love that. I did wonder though, like with his sister, is that the same in every universe? Like she dies the same way in every universe? Like what if she dies a different way? Like how is that an identifying? What if she didn't fall through the ice? What if she died in a car accident or something?
I think our Steven already knows that, because he already knows it's a fixed point in time. Like, because the thing about our Stephen Strange, and this is maybe just fanboy projecting, but like when he used the time stone to look at 14 million different versions of the future. Like, I just think it's crazy to think he didn't also look at the past and try to tinker. And like, especially with what we see in What If, it's obvious that his arrogance, he thinks that he can stop these fixed moments in times. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he went back and tried to change it, realized that it would never change, that it is a fixed moment, and it was just like, nah.
Interesting.
But that's just a theory, I guess.
That's
a good point. And there's two parts of Wanda's arcs too that I think are kind of like, with Vision not being in this movie. I think that kind of shows like I feel like there's a lot of why wasn't she looking for Vision and stuff like that. And I think there's a lot of that needs to be left to us to kind of realize, yeah, if Wanda was using the Darkhold to rip through multiverses to find Vision, there's no version of Vision that exists that'd be okay with that. So that's probably, I think that's something that she experienced through Wanda Vision of, ooh, I can't convince him that this stuff is okay. Now going back to Garrett, sorry.
Incursions.
Yeah. Incursions, post-credit scene, Clea. We got Charlize Theron in the MCU, and she is playing Clea, an incredibly important character in Doctor Strange lore. And they mention incursions, which obviously lead us directly into Secret Wars. I kind of want everybody's best theory of what the heck is going on in this post-credit scene and what they're stepping into. I want to start with you, Garrett.
Oh, well, my best guess is him trapping Dormammu in the time loop in the first movie, like maybe cause some kind of problems in the dark dimension. And I believe in the comics, the Clea first sees Strange like as he's fighting Dormammu in the dark dimension, and then is like, oh, he's not from around here, he's pretty cool. And so maybe
for those who don't know, Clea, the niece of Dormammu.
Correct. So I feel like there's a lot of theorizing we could do here. There's a lot of ways that it could go. I don't think the incursion they're going to fix is like I don't think this is a direct Secret Wars thing. I think it's down the line. I think there's a lot that we need to do to get there. But it was sick as hell to have this tease. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page with you that I think Secret Wars is coming. I don't think it's coming anytime in the immediate future, but I do think that the frequent mention of incursions is setting up for us to kind of understand what's going on in the multiverse and how things work so we can get to that point. Josh, what do you think?
I actually disagree and think Secret Wars is like coming way faster than people think. And I think if you look at sort of the pattern that Feige takes, like he did Civil War before we had like anybody in the MCU. At least like the comic version of Civil War is like it's insane. Like there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the whole established Marvel universe. He does Age of Ultron, kind of a soft version of that, like, you know, without Hank Pym, and there's, you know what I mean? So like I think Feige is more interested in what are these awesome events? How do I do a version of that in my universe? And I think Secret Wars is coming, like I'd say probably 2026 or 2027, which isn't exactly right around the corner, but I think way sooner than people think. And then as far as the incursions, I mean, I'm obsessed, bro. Like that was my favorite 4 to 5 years in comics ever, was reading Avengers, New Avengers by Jonathan Hickman, and then reading the Secret Wars event. It's literally my favorite, hands down. There's nothing else that compares to it. It's absolutely amazing. And so I think that scene with Clea, like, look, it's not a good scene. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, hey, Strange, it's Clea, let's go, you know? But there's a lot in there that I think fanboys like me can kind of like pick apart. Like, first of all, it would appear Steven super comfortable with that third eye power. He's ready to go, right? Also, Clea, knowing that he caused an incursion and the belief that they can go stop it. Well, to me, that just means they're going to go destroy a world. And I think that you could see a scenario in which Clea and Strange both become the leader of the Black Priests from Hickman's run, and they're out there trying to stop the incursions, probably by destroying a few Earths, but also maybe trying to mitigate other incursions. And I just think that we're sort of off to the races with what all of that could mean. And Clea's awesome, dude. You know, she's a being of pretty much pure magic. She's like tied to that dark dimension. So I believe that she can technically appear in our universe because she's not actually there. She's still like tethered to the dark dimension, which could possibly get around some of the multiversal rules. Like, why would she just show up in the world if she's worried about incursions? Wouldn't that cause an incursion? But I think there's even a way around that. So, dude, my brain is, I'm going a million miles per hour on this. Like, I'm so hyped up for it. So,
yeah, I like that a lot. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I agree with you. I think Secret Wars is going to be, I'm a year later than you. I think it's 2027, 2028-ish. And I think our 2025 is going to be basically our big Kang movie, and with a group ensemble, and then 2028 will be Secret Wars. We are running out of time, and so what I want to get from you, Paul, here is just rating out of 10 on the movie, your Clea thoughts here at the end, and then tell the people where they can find you.
9 out of 10. Loved it. Really enjoyed it. I know it's not for everyone. I love horror movies though. So I really enjoyed it. The Clea thoughts, I think that the Darkhold is what causes incursions. I think dreamwalking is what causes them. And I think Clea and America don't, because they can get into other universes through other means. So Clea can cut open reality, and America can go through the portal. So that's kind of why I think they're not going to cause incursions. Yeah, 9 out of 10.
Awesome. Josh, what's your rating out of 10?
9.5 out of 10, just to say that I like it more than Paul. Let's go.
Yes, we had some competition.
Yeah.
Garrett, how about you?
I'm gonna say 9 out of 10.
And so I absolutely loved it as well. I think I'm going 8.5 out of 10 for me. So I'm the coldest on it of the group, but I still very much loved it. Regarding Clea, I think there's so many interesting things that they're going to expand upon with her in the future, and I'm very excited about it. I know a lot of people were unhappy with some America Chavez stuff. We didn't get to talk about America Chavez much this show, just because there's so much to talk about and we started running out of time. I personally enjoyed her presence. I understand that the character is very different than the comics, and a lot of people didn't like that. To me, she was 15. This was her first appearance. She was being chased by the Scarlet Witch. I think she is going to develop into that confident, punch first, ask questions later America that we know and love. And regarding her magic powers at the end, I don't think we are going to see her powers tied strictly to magic. I don't think that's going to happen. I think similar to the comics, it's going to be very different. And she's not wearing a sling ring at the end of that movie, or at least I don't think. And so I think that's to show that they are just trying to show her how to control her powers, control them within herself. And I think that scene at the end wasn't to show that she's going to be in the magical world from now on. it's just to open up one point in another movie where she opens like sling ring-esque portal without a sling ring for somebody else to get through. I think it's going to be a plot moving point in the future.
Ooh, I like that.
So 8.5 out of 10 for me. If make sure you hit the follow button on Twitch. We thank everyone so much for joining us today. If you're listening on YouTube, hit that like button. You can find the Agents of Fandom wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you follow Josh, Den of Nerds, the Nerd Vengers on YouTube. Make sure you follow Paul, Heavy Spoilers on YouTube. You're gonna have an awesome article heading to agentsoffandom.com later today.
And sign up for our giveaway.
Sign up for our giveaway as well, Baby Groot.
I want that.
I'm gonna have my Wanda Maximoff, Anakin Skywalker
Exclusive.
character study. Also follow Agents Fandom on Twitter for our giveaway. That does it for today's episode. Josh, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an absolute blast.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. Thank you, man.
Thank you guys.
Love you guys.
That'll do it for today's episode. We covered Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. We have lots more coming in the future. Stay tuned. Peace.